Welcome everybody. We've got the agenda there. Just in case you've missed it, you can see on there that we've said hello to NCFE colleagues. I'm Janet King, Sector Manager for Education and Childcare, and this is a meeting that's facilitated and run by our wonderful moderation team and the provider development team as well. It's very much to give you updates and to offer reassurance. We're looking obviously around that moderated element, which is including assignment 2, whether that's for early years or whether that is for assisting teaching. So we look at that, but also today, because there have been those changes in the early years educator criteria, we're going to do a little spotlight on that as we go as well. There'll be the case study, professional discussions and top tips around that, questions and discussion. Please use the chat to make any points that you want to raise, and we'll do our very best. And we'll also be looking at what else is available and the other wonderful opportunities that you can have with the moderators and with the provider development team as well. So, and then we will ask you to complete the evaluation. So we've now caught all of that up on our recording, and we will make a start. See, I'm carrying on with that technology aim, and I'm not very good at technology, but I have in good faith that you can join Slido. So if you've got the phone, the smartphone, you can scan the code there. You can pop in the slido.com. You can join at slido.com, and there's the code. Hashtag 2106618, 2106618, and you'll be able to join us on Slido. Okay, so on the Slido there and on that poll, we'll be looking now on that scale there, and the question that we have got: how confident do you feel assessing the education and early years T level? So how confident are you with this qualification? Magic the way it's moving across. It's finding an average for us, isn't it? I think what that is showing us is that we've got a very sort of clear range of staff on the call today in terms of maybe finding your way or having been through the process before. So there's a very wide, diverse range of individuals, and that's absolutely great. So as we go through the session, hopefully we'll be able to increase your confidence in terms of certainly the areas that are on the agenda for today, which is primarily going to be focusing on that moderation, on hints and tips, and on the impact of the new early years educator criteria and the difference that may make to the way that you do things, or not, as the case may be. And then we've got our next question there that's just going to help with our sort of data, if that's okay, if you just wouldn't mind selecting one of those. Always great to welcome new people and to welcome people back to our webinars as well. So thank you. And that's a pretty even fix. So thank you for coming back, and thank you for joining us. And I hope you do come back as a new member of the Assessor network. Ooh, right, here we go. If yes, can you share one benefit or impact the network had on you or on your students? So what we're trying to do here is have a think about the impact. So when you come to Assessor network meetings, you know, it would be really good especially for the moderation team, I think the team of moderators, to be able to gauge what sort of impact is this having, to be able to support me, to support you in your understanding around assignment 2. Brilliant. Thank you for this. Really helps us to collect the feedback that we need to move things forward. Wonderful. And I think it all, you know, sharing practice, offering reassurance, building confidence, having where possible those questions asked. It's just a place where you can come, where you know it's a safe place where you can ask these questions, where we're going to glean information from each other, and we all benefit from these sessions. as NCFE staff, we fully begin to appreciate clearer, I suppose, what the challenges are for you, and that helps us as well. So thank you so much for this. Yeah, a network of assessors to go to for support, a reliable source as well, which I think is important to note. So brilliant, thank you. Okay, so thank you for your contributions there. That means a lot, and we'll be able to use that feedback in terms of the impact to date. So let's have a look at actually where we're up to. Where are we up to with moderation? So what we can now say is that 2021-2022 session has now closed, and the results day, which probably deserves a little bit of a drum roll, but I won't do it because I'll just have dogs barking in the background if I do, is Thursday the 15th of August. So that's what we're working towards now. And on results day, there will be a report available. So that moderator report in the portal will analyse the strengths and the areas for development. And that's a really good, it's going to be a really useful document to support you in the next session. So moving forward. So I think, you know, on results day, obviously, we're going to be celebrating the wonderful efforts of your students and all the amazing work that you've put in to make that happen. It doesn't just happen. We know that. All of that hard work and the celebration. Then take a look to see if you can access that report and that moderator report that will really help you when you're thinking about making things even better and making things, you know, more straightforward. Are there any hints and tips as to how to make things a nicer experience, more straightforward experience for you and for your students? What we can't do today, for very obvious compliance reasons, is we cannot enter into specific information regarding the last session, any marks, and certainly tolerance levels. We won't be able to discuss those, and your moderators will have taken you through that process. So we won't be able to enter into any further discussions that are, you know, personal to your centre and at your you know, for your information. So just to let you know. But we have got a packed agenda regardless. Okay, so here we go. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the DFE criteria. Okay, so I'm going to turn my camera off now so that I can concentrate fully. There's so much happening in early years, and you know this better than anybody. So, and forgive me if you're only working on the assisting teaching side of the T level. There's so much happening just now with early years in terms of we have a new occupational standard. So we have got an apprenticeship standard that has been revised. We have new EYE criteria. We have new ratios and legislative changes within the EYFS. Everything seems to be going on. And the one change that's made the biggest difference for us in the T level is going to be concentrated on assignment 2. And the majority of those changes will be assignment 2 part 1. There are, or there will be, some impact to part 2, the structured observations for the early years occupational specialisms, but these are minor. So I'm going to concentrate and focus on assignment 2 part 1 and what the changes mean. It does say on the slide there where you can find the documentation, but let's just make something really, really clear. If you've got students now already doing the T level and they're going to be going on to their EYE occupational specialism, they will have already been in placement. They will have already been working towards those competencies, and they're building up their evidence in preparation for moderation. So they're already being observed. You're already observing them. Students who started the T level in 2023 and are due to finish in 2025. So they're going to be coming back into their second year in September 24. They will carry on using the version of competencies, of which I believe there are around 41. They will finish what they started. That is something that is very, very important to note. So when you hear, and you will hear a lot of communications in terms of the new EYE criteria must be implemented from September 24, this is only for new registrations. So first year students starting in 24, they're the ones who will be using a different version of Assignment 2 Part 1. Students who started in 23, going into their second year in September 24, will carry on ethically right as well, because they've been collecting evidence against those 41 competencies. They will carry on and they'll finish what they started. I think it's very important that we just hammer that home. So despite the information you might hear from DFE, you might hear from communications from NCFE in terms of the implementation, this is only for new students from September 24. It's also important to know that the DFE are not going to be taking any old qualifications off the qualification full and relevant checklist. So the qualification that they're doing and the version that they will be doing will continue to be listed as full and relevant on the DFE list. So there is no problem and no concern here. One of the biggest things, I suppose, when you first look at the DFE Early Years Educator criteria is it's got a lot of competencies in there. I can't dress that up in any other way. When you look at the new DFE criteria, you can see that we've gone from 41 to many more and sort of almost trebled. However, when you look at the main headings side by side, so there are 6 main areas that continue to be the main headings for the EYE criteria. They haven't changed when you put them side by side with what's happening for those students in 23 to what's going to be happening for your new students in 24. So why is it so big, you might ask yourself? And the reason for that is that the DFE have broken down the criteria. So they've broken it down even further, and that's to help with standardization. They were finding from employers and from early year settings that, you know, the expectations and the experiences of students when they were coming to for employment was actually quite different and quite diverse. So it's been scaffolded, if you like, and it's been broken down, which means that it's really been broken down into granular steps to achieve the same outcome. And that's what I want to reassure you of. So yes, there are more competencies. However, they are steps in order to help that student to achieve. So when we first looked at that criteria, and you know, I kept turning over thinking this is a lot of criteria, one page, another page, and so on. And you'll do the same because there is a lot. You can't deny it. But then I looked again and thought, actually, these can all be categorized into certain themes. This can be done in such a way that as an assessor planning to meet all of these competencies, at first might feel overwhelming, but will eventually lead actually to being quite supportive if we can put them into categories. So the document has been arranged into sections to promote holistic opportunities. All of the recording forms can be found at the beginning of the document. So the planning, the activity plans, observation of skills, professional discussion, future planning, feedback, student evidence mapping forms, and those final assessment judgment forms are all at the beginning. Then we have a section that considers the assessor guide to the criteria. So you've got all the competencies listed there. And we've arranged these competencies under headings grouped together in what we feel is the most logical way, categorizing to support planning and those holistic opportunities. In this way, opportunities to maximize assessment is provided to support assessors, identifying categories and all criteria. So whilst things are not going to be arranged in chronological order, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, and so on, they've been arranged under those headings that will help for holistic opportunity. So these will naturally identify things that are going to naturally occur. So if we're looking, for example, let's take you through some examples. So the headings and the subheadings have been categorized into 7 areas, going from 1.1 right through to 6G. Assignment 2 part 1, you've got all of your planning forms at the beginning there, and then you've got your different sort of themes, if you like, or main headings. So we've got child development, as I was saying there, with stages and sequences and factors impacting. And we'll take a look at some of these in a moment. We've then got curriculum and learning that looks at assessment, evidence-based theory, EYFS, meeting individual needs, pedagogical approaches. And we've grouped and categorized all of the criteria that the DFE has put forward for those areas. Then we've got SEND, code of practice, supporting babies and children with SEND, and that's where we were. And so next we've got safeguarding and welfare, and you can see how the DFE have actually related so closely to section 3 of the EYFS with the headings as well, and with the competencies. So we've got wellbeing, maintaining a safe environment, child health, child protection, hygienic environments, food and drink requirements, personal care routines. We've then got health and safety, looking at legislation and guidance, policy and procedure, equality and inclusion, and then equality inclusion, looking at anti-discriminatory practice and legislation, roles and responsibilities, which includes professional practice and partnership working. So there's 7 main areas, but lots of sub areas that live within that. But you can see that they all belong in that sort of family or category of headings. So let's take a look at one of them, and we'll just go down and perhaps we'll whiz through the forms because we know the forms, and then we will find the first. Nearly there. So that's all the mapping evidence on there, and that's what I mean about the big long shopping list, because there's many, but they group together, so you will see those opportunities to be able to assess holistically. So here's a good example. Thank you. So we're on child development, and we've got the EYE criteria 1.2 and 1.3. bringing together what's being required in relation to stages and sequences. So 1.2, that's looking at those expected patterns of children's development, and then 1.3 looking at what the early years educator must know and children's development patterns to include, so the different areas of development. So that's been put together, and on the next, maybe not the next page, but the next page after that, we'll go into a different, there you go, so factors impacting child development. And you can see now we've gone straight to 1.7 and 2.5. So we've sort of jumped within the list of criteria, because actually this is where it might be naturally occurring. If you're looking at child development, if you're asking questions or having a professional discussion rather around child development, this is where you want to see, well, what else goes with child development from this big long list? And that's what we've done to be able to help with that planning. I think what's also good to know, because there are so many, we've also made sure that everything can be subject to a professional discussion. Now, that does not mean that you can do professional discussions with and sort of at the and threaten, if you like, the importance and the power of observations. Observations remain sort of the key. So you're going to be planning to observe all of these things, but there are some things that just don't naturally occur, and there are some areas where you're hoping that your students won't be exposed to as well. So, and other areas that are more difficult, such as the partnership working, and perhaps some areas of SEND as well as the more obvious safeguarding child protection issues. And so a professional discussion is probably going to be the more obvious choice for some of those areas. However, for the rest, we're observing, but you do have that opportunity to be able to use professional discussion as well. Whereas previously, you had more of a split in terms of this must be observed, this must be achieved through professional discussion, or or either. Now you can use professional discussion, which we think will help to be able to give that sort of to complement and to supplement as you go through your observations. Now, you're probably thinking this is going to take a lot longer. What I'm confident of is that when you start to plan and you start to be able to see how these different areas absolutely maximize the opportunity for holistic planning, holistic delivery, holistic assessment, that these things will be similar to what you're doing now. I think we'll see an increase in students as well at the same time. And of course, it's going to be a difficult transition year, that's for sure, because, or an interesting one, because of course if you've got second years, you'll be using one version with your 41 competencies, and here for September 24, you're going to be using a different document that's got more competencies in, because it's broken down even further the competencies of the 41. So it's more of a granular version, if you like. So you're going to be thinking about, when you do write these things up, you're thinking about those assessor judgments, and you're thinking about the assessment justifications. So when you look at what the competencies are there and the words that have been used in the assessor judgment guidance, these are the sorts of things that you can use in your justification. We're very mindful of how long it's been taking assessors to write things up. We are very mindful of that, and I know the moderation team are very mindful of this also. And so, please do share any thoughts or concerns that you have. But I would urge you to have a look at the document, to compare it with what you're doing now. And you will find that actually this is just a granular version. Because I looked at it and thought, oh my goodness, but then I looked at it again and just thought, okay, so that actually are the steps that the student will probably go through to be able to prove competence in the same way. So really breaking down the competencies that are there originally. So in a nutshell, we have got new EYE criteria. We've got to be mindful of that, and we've got to make sure that our qualification obviously meets that. Now, this has gone through DFE approval, so there is no problem in terms of this being full and relevant. It will be full and relevant for your new early years educator occupational specialism students. Are there more competencies? Absolutely, undeniably, yes. Will it take longer? I'm hoping that when you see the categories, it will help you to plan and to be as efficient as you are now, and you'll be able to do things holistically where in just the same way. So I'm confident when you get used to that, but you do need to take some time to look through the documentation. Over to you, Laura, and I'll try and jump on the chat.
Thank you, everyone. The comments coming through are really, really interesting, and we're taking on board everything that you're saying. Obviously, as team of moderators, we've got some similar questions as you all. So getting all that feedback and feeding it into how the moderation process will work is really beneficial. So thank you, and thanks, Janet, for sharing that information about the new criteria. I think these networks this is why we plan these networks, as an effective avenue to be able to talk about all these things and be able to inform that moderation process for the new criteria. What's important now is we've still got a second year on this current criteria, so the next part of the slides will be focusing still on the 41 criteria. So thank you for sharing that information. We will take all that information in, but it's really important that we do focus on the students that you've got now that are going into year 2 and making sure that we get that moderation for them. But all this information we'll take forward, and we'll keep having the Assessor Network meetings. We'll keep discussing it. There'll be lots and lots of training, lots of forms, I can see people are asking for lots of planning documents. So they're all the things that we'll take on board to be able to support you with these new students coming in September. Okay, so thank you. So just we've just finished part 2 for your students that will have just left, and now we'll be starting for the EYE assignment 2 part 1 again, which the moderation for that will open on the 1st of September and run through to the end of January. You can carry on moderating on your competencies throughout the year up until the May deadline, but we do think it is beneficial where possible that you do try and get competencies signed off by the end of January. Just reiterating again what Janet said, so we're focusing on the 41 for this year, but your new students coming in will be working on the new criteria. And then the next slide, please. Just some top tips, please, when you are getting ready for assignment 2 part 1 for your EYE. So if you've had any students leave from year 1 to year 2, please make sure they're withdrawn from the portal. Register your students as soon as possible onto that occupational specialism. You can do that now, but make sure they're on the correct assessment series. They need to be booking on the summer 25 booking, not the summer 2024. Please find out if you're new to it or you're unsure. Find out who the lead contact is on the portal, because when we get allocated our settings, we will go to that portal contact to arrange meetings. So if that portal contact is somebody that you're not familiar with, or somebody higher up or in a different team, sometimes that can cause delays for meetings. So find out who the lead contact on the portal is. Ask them as soon as a moderator contacts them to send it on to assessors, tutors, so we can talk to you straight away, plan a meeting, go through the moderation process, and then we can get dates booked in as soon as possible. When students have completed your EYE part 1, which people usually do at the end, you've just got to remember to tick on the portal if they've achieved or not yet achieved. There was quite a few students where they'd not ticked, people had not ticked the box, so it just meant delays for different things, and we have to go backwards and forwards for it. So that's just a reminder there. If we just go on to the next slide, please. For those of you, this is just for those of you that are new, any providers new listening. So once you've done assignment 2 part 1, you then go on to assignment 2 part 2, and that's for assisted teaching and the EYE occupational specialists. There are 3 separate observations for that, and each observation must be carried out once and observed by the provider appointed assessor. They must be done in the placement as well. And the one-off, and so you should feel like the students are ready to have to demonstrate their skills at the best of their ability. Because the window opens on the 1st of February, the ones that you've got really confident students that are ready, get those dates booked in first. You can go up to the mid-May, so those ones that might need that little bit more extra time, you can book in a little bit later. We do advise, because of moderators and how many providers we have, to try and get your dates on first structured observations as soon as possible. So last year we had providers doing it right at the beginning in September. They knew what dates they wanted. If you've got block weeks or anything like that, we recommend you share them with moderators as soon as you're allocated, so you can have your preferred dates. We obviously do get quite booked up, and therefore you might not get your first choice if you don't do that. Basically, the sooner the better. The deadline will be the 16th of May 2025, so everything will have to be completed for your students by then. And there is lots of further information all in the tutor guides, so we'll share the links on there. Okay, the next slide, please. So we're now going to share a short video with you about a case study between our chief moderator, Jo Patton, and an assessor, Kay Davey, from Bridgewater and Taunton College. So we do find that professional discussions particularly are can be quite tricky for EYE part 1. And so Kay's she's planned this in quite a different way, and it has been really effective. So we'll just let you listen in for a few minutes to the way that she approached this. This is for EYE part 1 and part 2. Thank you.
I'm going to introduce myself. So I'm Jo Patton, Chief Moderator NCFE, and I'm here today with Kay. Hi, Kay.
Hi, Jo.
So Kay, you're assessing with Bridgewater and Taunton College?
Yeah. So my students are at Taunton campus at Bridgewater and Taunton College.
Lovely. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions about EYE criteria, EYE 1.1, which is it's in both the competency criteria and the structured observations. In particular, I'm interested in how you managed EYE 1.1 for your structured observations. And one of the things I noticed through my moderation visits was how you'd planned that quite well to capture the criteria in detail. So what I'm going to do is just ask you a couple of questions about how you did that, which will hopefully support other providers and assessors in their planning of that criteria.
Yeah.
So first of all, can you just talk me through how you structured the professional discussion for EYE 1.1?
Yeah, of course. So we ask my students to focus on their key children to structure that discussion around 1.1. So we get them to break down and do previous work kind of prior to their structured observations coming up and their competency ones, where they're gathering observations on their children, doing overall assessments, and they really shadow that kind of key worker role for them. And they have at least one normative development or child following that kind of normative pattern of development, and then one child with additional needs of some sort, so either EAL or a SENS need or some suspected kind of SENS need or delayed development. So in terms of that structuring the discussion for that 1.1, we get them to rely on that knowledge of those children. So to go through each area of development and talk about key milestones that child is meeting and whether they are normative for that age and stage. And then they usually talk through their normative child and their child with SEND or additional needs, and it allows them to show where they have awareness of children either showing milestones that are maybe above their predicted age range or kind of below in certain areas, and their understanding that not all areas are the same. So it really lets them hit that individual rate and pace as well, because they're automatically talking about how they have two children, similar age range, but are developing in very different ways depending on their individual kind of circumstances as well.
Yeah, great. And I really liked as well how your students that did this, they linked it to the activity that they planned as well, didn't they? So you know, whether that was a care routine or the literacy planned activity, they were kind of linking it to that, but then going through the different areas of development and what they'd expect to see with each of their key children.
Yeah, definitely. So we always get them to aim their activity at their key children, whether they're expecting the key child to be in or not. We say plan as if your key child's going to be there, because you never know, sometimes they're off ill, but you can, and then it enables them to talk about the milestones that their children are working towards and why their activity supports those milestones. And it also allows them to then reflect that in their plans and, like you say, talk wider around that as well. The care routines as well, they often find it easier to meet it in terms of relating to how, and the activity as well, how they might tailor it and change it if they're working with a younger age range, or some of them are able to talk about in their care routines, because they've known the children for a bit longer, how the child previously needed support in certain elements, and now they're able to demonstrate at a different level, and kind of they can see that progress being made. So again, it shows their awareness of where they've come from. And a lot of them that are in the preschool room as well, they talk about how they're showing that school readiness. They're encouraging them to go and get their own trays and scrape their food off. So again, it shows that they know what the next steps are in that kind of 5 to 7 age range as well.
Yeah, excellent. And I really liked as well that with your students, by using this type of format, I felt that they're contextualizing it to the children they're working with, so it shows a greater depth of understanding. And as a moderator, when I come out, rather than, you know, if you have got a student that's just kind of talking through expected milestones, that's great, but actually relating it to specific children within their setting just adds that greater depth, which was really great to see. So did you do anything in addition to support your students to prepare for the criteria?
Yeah, so like I say, kind of prior to that, we kind of support them all the way through the end of year 1 and all the way through year 2. We give them different tasks to be doing around gathering observation data. I do lots of discussion in class. We quite often start off our week where they've had time and placement, talking about what are your children doing this week? What were your kind of wow moments of observation? What's come up for the children you're working with this week? So they start to share amongst them. And again, I think that allows them to understand that breadth and depth as well, because then someone will say, oh, one of my EL children did this week and I was supporting them with this, and it was a wow moment because for the first time they were able to do X, Y, and Z. And then other students were able to relate that to the children they're working with as well and take ideas forward from that. So I think that ongoing knowledge and reminder of kind of what's happening with them, that they're having that ongoing ability to talk about their children in different areas of development helps. And then when we come to the actual kind of final preparations, if you like, for those structured and putting their notes together for professional discussion, I give them a table broken down into the different age ranges, the different areas of development, and have a row for their normative child and then their SEND key child, and get them to start putting some notes together from all the observations and assessments they've done, so they've got it in more of a concrete format. And I encourage them to not write it in full sentences, but just kind of use initials and maybe key examples of things they've seen their children doing, so that in the moment they don't kind of panic and their mind goes blank. Because I think with some students, they get nerves and they kind of go, oh, I know it, but it's not on the tip of their tongue. So it just helps them to be able to refer to, oh yeah, Elle, and she was doing puzzles this week, and it gets them started and they start to relax the conversation more.
That's great. So I think we've already touched on, I had another question to ask you, which I think we have already touched on, but do you think that the format that you're using supports your students to further develop their knowledge of child development in any other ways? I think we have kind of covered that. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it's just around that them as practitioners, I feel really confident, and I loved hearing their professional discussions this year, because I felt as practitioners, they know their children inside and out.
Yeah.
And I think that to me is more important than be able to reel off a list of milestones like perhaps they might have done in year one for the exams. That's different than being able to talk really in depth about their children and how they support them as well. So I encourage them in that conversation as well to not just talk about where the child's at, but how do they as practitioners, because that comes into that marking guidance as well, how do they support them in that? And they, when they're talking about their own key children, they naturally start talking about, oh, we used flashcards for her and now she's able to recognise those different things, or we worked with parents, and they automatically start bringing in those links of working with other professionals. So when I go through and kind of criteria grade it against the notes, I'm quite often ending up putting those working with others links into it, because they naturally start talking about how they gave the parents some links, or they had the SALT involved with that child, or the EdSite came in. So again, it shows their knowledge as them going into the workforce of how it all comes together rather than being separate aspects, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think what they're doing is they're showing their child development knowledge, but they're also showing that they're ready to be level 3 practitioners, aren't they? Which is really good to see. Okay, so then the only other thing I was going to ask you is, do you feel that the format you used for the PD for 1.1 was effective in terms of your students meeting the higher marks within the grading criteria? So for some assessors new to looking at this, looking at perhaps their students that want to achieve 3 and 4 marks, do you think it was effective in allowing your students to achieve this?
Yeah, definitely, because I think when it breaks it down, because they're automatically talking about their children, like I said, they're already talking automatically on individual rate and pace, so that's a quick and easy one to tick off. They've automatically recognising that the children are different in the ways they develop. They've got that structure to make sure they cover every area of development. That's the one thing that I make sure they do in that table. So make sure that actually they're not missing areas of development. They cover that kind of full range. And I think, again, because they end up talking about their children that they know inside and out, the links to theory, which they need for that kind of 3 and 4 marks, and the references to the EYFS, they start making them automatically, or it's a minor prompt in that kind of support period where I'm talking things through with them, that I might talk to them. So one of our students I know did a lot of work with one of our SEND children around gestalt language. So she was automatically talking about that when she was talking about her child's language development, which again, easily is her evidence in her application of theory. And I was encouraging them to think not just about kind of squeezing in those kind of theories, you know, like Vygotsky, etc., but actually talk naturally about what theories, whether you've learned it on the T level or outside the T level, what theories naturally relate to your children And again, with supporting them, they naturally start talking about their responsibility to include them and equality and diversity. It links in quite smoothly to gain those higher marks for those extra bits that are needed, I think.
Fantastic, thank you. That's really great, Kay, and I agree. I think it does help them, and also it potentially links to some of the other criteria in the structural observations, doesn't it? Because it might they might be starting to answer elements of 1.4 about different factors that might be impacting a child and their development as well. So I think that is a really good one that would show sort of holistic knowledge across the range. So thank you. Well, hopefully
links. Oh, sorry. Definitely find lots of links between that 1.1 and 1.4. I end up kind of going back and forth because, like you say, they talk about the factors impacting them, and then they talk more about the theory kind of in the 1.4 sometimes, and it all ties together then. But it helps.
That's great. Thank you ever so much for your time. And hopefully this will help other providers that are sort of starting to think about how they might structure EYE 1.1. So thank you ever so much.
No problem.
Thank you, Sarah. But I do hope that you found that beneficial, and you can watch it again if you like on the YouTube channel. We will share the link. But it shows as well just how it was only covering 1.1, but holistically she was covering so much more. She was talking about factors which covered 1.4. She was also covering things such as for structured observations 3, the S5.9, meeting with other professionals. So there was lots of things covered, and I think that will be really important going into the new criteria, that you do look holistically at where things map across. So just something else to consider. Okay, so we'll now move on to talking about professional discussions. I know it is a hot topic and there's quite a few questions on there that we do keep trying to answer in the chat, and we will come back to any that we've missed. We just want to share some of the top tips from this year, just between the team of moderators, just to help prepare going into next year really. So just a quick 5 minutes on some top tips. So we do want to highlight that there isn't any right or wrong way for a professional discussion. I don't know if that's helpful or not. I think sometimes people would prefer to have a description of what it needs to look like, but it's not. It's more about just being a discussion between you and your student to cover the criteria that's being asked for. We do find that it is really beneficial where assessors are noting things that are happening in the room and the observation, so that when you go into this discussion, you're trying to draw them back to contextualize everything that they're talking about. So I do think that's something that we do really recommend, to take a note and move the discussions forward by saying, right back to practice, what did that tell you, what did you see, and check. That helps you to check their understanding rather than them reading reams and reams of information. So I'll now hand over to Louise, who'll share a couple more.
Hi everyone, it's lovely to see so many people joined us today. So just following on a little bit from what Laura has just said about some tips, top tips for PD, and some of the other sort of tips we've got are that the student leads the conversation, that they know what they're going to cover within their PD, and they have their plans to refer to, and then the assessor guides the discussion through questions and observation of practice. So a little bit back to what Laura said, you know, it's making those notes of what you're seeing, and sometimes I think assessors worry or refrain from asking sort of further questions or prompting or guidance. And, you know, where there is that linked in their planning or within their planning for their observation or in their activity plans, you know, it's good to guide them to support them to bring that or move that discussion forward. Another one is student contextualize into the activity that's taken place, and so that they show how they relate theory to practice. And sort of thirdly, that the student knows to be succinct within their answers. So long and lengthy doesn't always necessarily equal higher marks. Again, taking it back to what Laura said about the student being able to contextualise to what they've seen, what they've planned for, you know, sort of linking back to the video as well, and how the assessor students were contextualising to their children that they were working with, knowing their developmental areas and expanding on that in their PDs, and you know, really sort of contextualising to what they see and know, you know, can really support professional discussions moving forward. So I'm going to now pass over to Frances to share some more top tips for you.
Hello. My top tips then is, when we're talking in professional discussion, is for assessors to make sure that they're only covering the criteria that's allowing for a professional discussion. For example, EYE Structured Observation 3, S4.24, in the information on the tutor guidance, it says that you can only discuss common childhood illnesses, immunisations, and isolation and exclusion periods. But what we are finding time and time again is that a lot more of that criterion is included in professional discussions, and when we come to market we can't give it a mark because it's not allowed. So that's something else to remember. And also, if you feel students are going to be disadvantaged because some areas of practice cannot be observed, such as PPE or equality and diversity, then sometimes it's better if you highlight this where you can in your narrative for your observation, rather than try and wedge it into the professional discussion. Next point, EYE 1.1, we've discussed that a lot because it's major. It's one that we assessors struggle and students struggle to get all the information in that we need. Everybody is trying to aim for a 4, so we're trying to give you as much support as we can around that. So we saw the video, really good to see exactly how they thought about the different milestones and how they contextualized that with the students or the children they were working with. So we advise that you look at the age range of the children that the student is doing the activity with, and look at all the areas of development for that age group, and then a younger age and an older age. We find it is more beneficial if the student chooses ages they've worked with, because they can think back to a student or a child that they can talk a bit about the circumstances around that child's development, whether they're above or below. And when discussing milestones, we found again some people get a bit confused with the EYFS development matters and also the child development areas. The two aren't the same. So what we would advise is that you look at the criterion that is in the tutor guidance and only give us those criterion. Another one that we find that students forget to talk about and assessors forget to ask is about cognitive and brain development. And so planning ahead and the assessors having time to look at the plans that the students are given is another way to overcome that if possible. And then talking about, we are encouraging a walk and talk. So we totally we understand, we are mindful. However, we have boundaries where the observation and the professional discussions should last no more than an hour. So while we're walking from reception, say, to where we're going to have the activity, that we look at that as a walk and talk, a place where you can encourage the student to identify where the first aid room is, where the Senko works, where the safeguarding people are, and also to all the displays that they have on our journey through to that classroom or wherever we're having the activity, to demonstrate what the school does to include diversity and equality, to bring in families and cultures and differences that the setting can do. And then we can, both myself and the assessor, can then write notes about what it is we've seen and what the student has said to us. And that minimises your time needed in professional discussion, which, as I say, we appreciate is tight. We also encourage assessors, and we will do more so, because we're learning as we go along as much as you are, that we ask the student to arrange for a time after the observation, after the professional discussion, if possible, to give some feedback. We know that isn't always possible, we totally get that, and sometimes some students arrange to feedback in lunch breaks and mid-morning breaks. I say breaks, it's not a break for the teacher obviously, because they're usually catching up with something, hence catching up with feedback. But if there's any way in which we can observe that feedback, that is really good. If we can't, and we get that, we totally get that, we need the assessor to write in the observation narrative what the student would have fed back to the teacher if they did have time, and what the next steps are. What is that activity that they've just completed going to feed into future planning? That would be really good. And so with that, I'll pass over to Laura Chapman. Thank you.
Thank you, Frances. Thank you. So I will be continuing the theme on talking about professional discussions. What we've put together here are some top tips, and I'll just continue these here. So what we're looking for is students that have good understanding of the criteria, where the PD is allowed to support the observations, and also thinking outside of the box, covering this. It's really important to make sure that they relate it to the latest research, which also enables them to increase marks and look at those higher marking bands. Also, excuse me. Also, it's really important for students to consider the children that they have within that activity. So looking at the range of abilities and needs within that activity, and also contextualising that to their answers. I think, as we've mentioned earlier about planning, this is where planning is really key to use that within the discussion, and talk about how they've come about that within with planning with their activity. So also as well, just to add to that, best practice is where assessors also balance between preparing questions and using the tutor guide on the day as well. So using both of those techniques just to support and move the conversation along. It's really important that the assessors have good knowledge of the marking bands, but also are prepared with any further questions they might want to ask during that session. And it might be that as they've just watched the observation, they see something that they want to just further ask questions about that specific event, or what's just happened within that observation. Sometimes when assessors only use pre-written questions, evidence can be missed, so it's important to have that balance. So we were going to move on to some questions, but we are running out of time. So what we're going to do is take notes of the questions that have been asked today. I think some have been answered during the session, but if you feel like your questions haven't been asked, then what we'll do is make sure that we get back to you and respond to those after the forum. So now I'm going to move on, and we're going to move you to Louise. So if I can pass you to Louise, thank you.
Thanks, Laura.
Thank you.
With sort of continuing the theme of discussing planning, we wanted to sort of bring you evidence of a sort of an effective planning example that we've seen used in the structured observations, and this planning document that you can see on screen at the moment is for assistant teaching, and it was for structured observation 1. So on this slide you can see that the student has identified the criteria being covered and highlighted it in different colours. So what the document would look like in full is they have 2 columns. So the first column is where they've added their planning, what they're going to intend to cover, what their activity is with the children, which we'll show you on the next slide. And this slide then, the second column, is highlighting the criteria that's going to be covered related to structured observation 1. Helen or Gemma, if you wouldn't mind just moving on to the next slide for me, thank you. So here is, here on this one is the second column of their planning, and you can see here that the students used colour coding to identify where they feel their planned activity will cover the criteria. and it enabled the student to show clearly where their understanding of the criteria and where they feel it's being met within their planning. So I've just sort of picked out an example, and the students highlighted in yellow S3.26, which is instructed observation 1, which is participate in digital safety. So the student in the planning was going to be using the settings iPads. And within the planning, they were talking about how the children had previous learning on online safety, and they'd had a little bit of discussion around that previously within school, and the student was going to use this to encourage the student to the children to reflect on their reflect on this during the activity, and talk about how they can use the iPad safely within setting and during the activity that the student was carrying out. The assessor also had a copy of the planning, and she was able to then use this during both the direct observation and professional discussion. Within the direct observation, it just enabled the assessor to identify where in the planning she'd observed the student, meeting those intended learning outcomes. And then again, during the professional discussion, used the planning document to support the student moving forward with the professional discussion. So she felt there was areas perhaps that she felt the student could extend their discussion, or at points that within that discussion that can be discussed, she used the planning to refer to support the student to move forward in their discussion. And it also supported with then coming to the justifications of marks as well. So the assessor was able to sort of link to the planning and the direct observation that had been carried out to justify where those marks had been given and why, using examples. So it just shows there, we're just looking at, an in-depth planning, or where students have planned well and added detail. It can really support that live assessment of structured observations. Thank you.
Okay, so a lot of questions around that new criteria, future planning, looking for different examples and so on. And what's really evident from this, first of all, I've got to say the wonderful network and supporting each other with the responses. But if there is, people who are starting this, who are beginning this journey in September 24, you're probably thinking, oh my goodness me, because there's an awful lot of people at different stages and a lot of conversations around the different approaches and so on. So I would urge you to get in touch as well, so that we can talk you through and start from your starting point and take you through in that methodical way. People are asking about professional discussions. It's tricky to timestamp when the professional discussion is holistic. Timestamps are required. Can we, I don't know if you can take this one, moderators, can we please confirm professional discussions can be moderated in college and not placement? Arranging this in placement is rather challenging due to time constraints and rooming availability. Additionally, the student needs time to reflect to be able to discuss effectively. So that's the moderation of APD. I don't know if you just want to summarise that.
Hi, Janet, I have put a response in there. So
have you? Sorry, Laura.
It's all right. Just the preferred method is to do it obviously directly after the observation has taken place. But where that cannot take place, we just recommend they do talk to the moderators, and alternatives will be discussed. So there has been occasions when we have had to do those back in college.
Thank you. There's also questions around when the allocation of assessor to providers will be confirmed, and I just responded to that in the chat, but I'm sure it's on everybody's mind, and I think that's fair to say, moderators, that you're working incredibly hard on that, and that information will be shared as soon as possible. Is that that fair answer? Are we talking sort of within the next 4 to 6 weeks?
Yeah, usually around this like August time, yeah, hopefully.
Okay, perfect, thank you, because I know just coming out of one session and then allocating for a new one, there's a lot of time involved. Just looking to see if there's any sort of common questions really. When do year 1 observations for early years educator need sending for moderation, and how is that done, please? I don't know if anybody can pick that one up, or whether we want to look at these. We might want to look at these methodically after the presentation, if you like, and then we can maybe get back to people with some of these answers, or else we're going to really go into.
I think just drawing everyone to the frequently asked questions as well, Janet, because we have had quite a lot of these come up before. So we have got the frequently asked questions, and we'll keep sharing the link on there to have a look. But we will, as you said, look through all these and provide responses. In terms of when do the year 1 observations you need sending, the only observations that you have to send for the is for assignment to part 1 are the moderated students. So if, as we mentioned, if we only moderated the competencies, so sometimes if I give an example from last year, so the 41 competencies were usually observed across 3 students, splitting up the criteria to 2 sections per student. For those 3 students, you do have to send the observations, professional discussions within a tight turnaround, but it is only for those 3. We don't need any other information for the year 1 observations. Does that answer your question, Beverly?
I think that's certainly answering the question and moving us forward. And you're absolutely right. We've had feedback in the chat about, how can we speak to moderators when we're not allocated moderators until year 2, or words around to that effect. If there's anything around the structure of assignment 2 that you would like to talk about, I've put my email in there. You've also got Gemma and Helen on speed dial, I'm sure. So please do get in touch with us, and we can take you through that and talk you through that side of things. And in terms of the moderator, as soon as you've been in touch to lock in your students to that occupational specialism, so at the end of year 1 going in, or at the very beginning of year 2, then you'll be allocated that moderator and this process can start. But any questions that you have, any worries that you may have, this is what the Assessor Network is all about. And any question that we haven't been able to get through today, we will go through, and we will make sure that we answer all of these questions. But you are we'd be more than happy to discuss anything that we can. So Gemma, Helen and myself, so please do get in touch with us, and I think my email's in the chat there somewhere as well. Thank you. So I think we leave the questions, because I think we've kind of answered the more common ones, I think, because I think another question that's on everybody's mind is about the sampling strategy and about how many students, and will all students be moderated and so on. And I think that really is dependent on cohort size and so on. So I guess that's something that has to be discreet to the individual providers and the individual assessors as well. Would you say that was true or fair?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right, well, maybe we move on from the questions. And that frequently asked questions document, is that something that can be popped in the chat? Because I know that was on the...
Yeah, we can pop that in again. I've popped it in further up on the chat, but we can keep sharing that so it doesn't get lost. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Laura.
So we will look at all those questions and provide responses to them like we have done before. Just to finish off from a moderator perspective, it is for those of you that are looking at planning now going into next session. It's just to say, as we've discussed quite a lot, 1.1 for child development, they're the ones to start looking at early, try and get the students to practice it as much as possible. I think practice on each other. We've had good examples where students have done peer reviews on each other, so really starting that early and getting lots of practice in. For assisted teaching, as Frances said, contributing to that assessment process, talking to the teachers from day one, how can I meet the high mark criteria for S1.9 and 2.8, making sure that they can use technology. We know that some students have fed back that they find it difficult to use technology. It doesn't have to be computers, it can be anything, so looking at technology in the widest sense. One of the criteria points is around helping children to choose realistic goals. We find that students will talk about SMART targets, but don't often involve the pupils in choosing those goals. So again, supporting students to be able to do that and practicing that. Across both EYE and AT, we found that the students were really, really good at treating children fairly and equally, but to meet the higher mark criteria, they need to plan around that as well. So different cultures, family traditions within their activities, so something to consider. And then across both, again, spontaneous maths. So we have found a link there and we'll pop that in the chat. It's just a really good blog that looks at all areas of spontaneous maths. And again, starting that with students from the beginning, every activity that they do, how can they support maths within those activities to get those higher marks? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I was just responding to something in the chat, so I'll quickly say that instead, because there's been a question around bringing notes into a professional discussion. And what we wouldn't want is for the student to become led by a script. We want things to be a natural, conversational, professional discussion. However, if the student has got examples, notes, reflections, policies, procedures, etc., that they want to refer to move the discussion forward, this is something that will be okay, but we don't want anything scripted, so I hope that helps. Just very quickly there on this slide, you can see the further support that's available from NCFE and the different areas that involves. So obviously you'll be able to see what's more important to you, whether that's going to be the early years or whether that's going to be something for assisting teaching. Please let me remind you about those reports. We started off this webinar by saying that there will be a chief examiner and chief moderator report available in the summer of 24 after results day, which is the 15th of August. So do look out for that, because that will be able to help you. And we've also got lots of information, video case studies and all recordings on our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to find information about new and upcoming events on the different links that we have on there as well. And remember to keep in touch with us if you've got anything that you want to discuss. I think sometimes it's difficult when there's so much going on. It's very new to a lot of people. We've got the new criteria that's going to be very new for everyone. And then we're all at different stages within the qualification journey. And so we appreciate that, and how that is going to sort of feel for each and every one of you is going to feel slightly different, because you bring in a different perspective or a brand new slate to the situation. And as Helen has said in the chat there, please do keep those questions coming. We will look through these and we will reflect. You've got some previous networks and support groups there that have got the recordings available for you, so you'll be able to go on to the YouTube channel and access those links there to be able to support you. I feel like I should be handing back to somebody now. Shall I just carry on? Helen, are you coming in?
I can come in if you like. Yes, I can absolutely come in.
Okay.
We'll do it together. We'll do a joint thing. So you'll see on the screen now a couple of QR codes. One of them takes you to our upcoming events, and if you keep an eye on that in the coming weeks, we'll get the September start, so the first term's support events up on there. And also we've got our next Assistant Teaching Forum. Janet, I don't know anything about that one. Do you know anything about the forum?
Yeah, so our Assistant Teaching Forum is going to enable CPD. So if you're working in early years, or you've been teaching early years, or you're on assisting teaching and you just want more information around that for the core delivery, it's very good, useful CPD. We have lots of guest speakers and so on. So you'll be able to find out more.
We've got the event registration form. That's the link you'll see from that first QR code about the events that we have. And as you can see, the Assessor and Teacher Network will be 4th of September. I've just quickly checked that second QR code and it didn't look like it worked. So we'll follow up with the answers to questions with a code that works. Janet, I'm going to hand back to yourself.
Okay, so basically now, if you've got any other questions, you know where we are. You'll find more information on our qualification page, and that QR code will take you there, but you've got the link there as well. Please do keep in touch with us. Let us know. As I keep sort of stressing, some fantastic networking opportunities going on, and the way that you're professionally supporting each other is amazing. So please do continue to do that on these events like this. But also we appreciate that sometimes you might want to get in touch with us to check something, to clarify something, just to have a discussion and to find some reassurance. We're here for that. Please do keep in touch with us, and we'll help you as much as we possibly can. The last thing to say really is to thank everybody for their time and for contributing and for posing those questions and for giving us the opportunity to be able to continue to support you and for you to support each other. This is going to be a really good next year, I feel. Everything is going really well. We've got education in early years, you're the experts, and you're doing everything that you need to do to make this happen. We're here to offer you that reassurance and to guide you where we can, but you're the ones who make this happen. We absolutely appreciate that, so thank you.
Absolutely, and we've just popped that QR code for the feedback form on today's session, so please, we ask for your top tips. So your feedback really does help us develop what we do and create what we do for yourselves. So if you have any questions that you haven't had the chance to ask, please do put them into the chat. We do ask, please also fill in the evaluation form so we know what we're doing right and what we can do even better. And so thank you for your time, and thank you to the moderators for taking the time out to do this as well this afternoon for you guys. It's really useful for you to see the moderators as being, normal people just like yourselves who absolutely want the same best outcomes for your students. So work with them and get the most out of them, because they have the hotline to the criteria and the whole process. Janet, any closing comments you'd like to make? We'll say thank you and goodbye to everybody.
I think just for you to remember that your professional judgments, be confident in that you know exactly what a level 3 early years educator or AT student for that matter needs to look and feel like. You've got that, and now it's about how we get familiar, grow familiar with the new processes, but at the end of the day you absolutely know what you're looking for, and that professional judgment and that confidence in your own professional judgment must be the key to everything. And what I will say is there was a question, just a final question, around aspects of things that are difficult to observe, and one in particular that came onto the chat, and that's a classic example of where professional discussion could be used.